Welcome back, everybody, to the Complete Aviation Solutions Deep Dive. It's number 30 for us today, and we're going to be focusing on some fascinating developments in the world of airlines, specifically how they're adjusting their fleets and their operations in response to some pretty interesting challenges out there.
Yeah, it's a dynamic industry for sure. One minute you're dealing with geopolitical tensions, and the next it's economic pressures. It's all about kind of staying ahead of the curve and being creative with solutions.
Exactly, and we've got three stories today that I think really highlight that. First up, we're heading over to Canada, where a Russian cargo plane has been grounded for over 3 years now and is at the center of a pretty big legal battle.
Right, the Antonov An 124-100. It belongs to Volga Airlines, and it's been stuck at Toronto Pearson International Airport since February 2022.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. Initially, it was detained as part of the sanctions against Russia following the invasion of Ukraine, but things have gotten a lot more complicated since then.
Right. Canada is actually taking steps to permanently seize the plane
Oh,
and hand it over to Ukraine.
yeah.
But Volga is fighting back. They're saying that Canada is essentially stealing their aircraft, and they filed lawsuits. They've even launched an international arbitration claim.
It's a fascinating case, really. It raises a lot of, important questions about national sovereignty versus international property rights. And, you know, if Canada succeeds, this could set a precedent for other countries to seize assets in similar situations.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And adding another layer of complexity here, the ownership of the plane itself is it's a little bit of a tangled web. It's not just Volga, there are subsidiaries involved, there are banks,
Yeah.
even a sanctioned co-founder is in the mix. Canada had to actually update their seizure order just to reflect all the different players.
Oh, yeah, you can imagine the legal headaches involved in something like this.
Mm.
And, let's not forget about the practical implications here. This massive cargo plane has just been sitting on the tarmac for over 3 years, racking up parking fees the whole time.
Yeah, I bet. Speaking of big plans and potential logistical challenges, our next story takes us to Malaysia, where the government of Sarawak is launching a brand new airline called Air Borneo.
Yeah, it's quite an ambitious undertaking. They acquired MA Swings from Malaysia Aviation Group, and they're aiming to not only boost connectivity within Sarawak, but also expand to international destinations.
Yeah, and we're talking Singapore, Jakarta, Hong Kong. They even have Frankfurt on their list.
They do.
So this is a pretty bold move for a new airline,
Yeah.
especially considering, the financial hurdles that are involved in running an airline these days, right?
Absolutely. Operating an airline requires a substantial investment, and Air Borneo is going to need significant financial resources if they're going to succeed. The Sarawak government seems to be aware of this, though, and they're strategically investing in airport upgrades alongside the airline's development.
Yeah, it sounds like they're putting their money where their mouth is for sure.
Yeah.
A new terminal at Miri Airport is in the works, and they're upgrading other airports as well. So it's a pretty clear signal that they're serious about supporting Air Borneo's growth.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Launching a new airline is no easy feat, and Air Borneo has a lot of work ahead to meet those pretty ambitious goals.
They do. Now, for our final story today, we're shifting gears a little bit. We're going to look at a veteran airline that's making some pretty smart financial moves.
Mhm.
Norwegian Airlines is buying 10 Boeing 737-800s that they've been leasing, and it's a decision with some interesting implications.
Yeah, it's a classic buy to save strategy. By purchasing these aircraft outright, Norwegian expects to cut their leasing costs significantly, saving them around 17.8 million US dollars per year.
Wow, that's a pretty substantial chunk of change,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even stop there. They're also anticipating a one-time gain of about 50.8 million USD on the transaction itself.
Right, that's due to the difference between the purchase price and the reduction in their lease liabilities. It's a smart accounting move. It reflects a longer-term vision for their fleet management.
It does, and this purchase is really just one piece of the puzzle. It's part of Norwegian's overall fleet strategy, giving them more control, more flexibility for the future.
Yeah, it's a reminder that behind the scenes, airlines are constantly evaluating their assets, making these strategic decisions about ownership versus leasing. There are a lot of factors to consider. You have cost savings, flexibility, long-term planning, all of that goes into it.
And sometimes those decisions are influenced by external factors, like the engine issues we're going to delve into after a quick break.
So speaking of those engine woes, let's shift our focus now to Salam Air, a low-cost carrier that's based in Oman. they've hit a little bit of a snag with their plans to introduce these new Embraer E195 E2 jets.
Oh, right. I remember hearing something about this. What exactly is the problem?
Well, it all comes down to the engines, specifically the Pratt& Whitney PW and 1900G engines. They've been causing some problems for other airlines as well, particularly in regions with, harsh operating conditions like the Middle East.
Yeah, I've heard that dust ingestion can be a real issue for these engines, especially in those desert environments. Is that what's affecting Salam Air?
It is, and Embraer themselves have actually advised Salam Air to hold off on taking delivery of those E2s until Pratt& Whitney implements an upgrade that will make the engines more resilient to, dust and other environmental
So
factors.
it's a better safe than sorry, especially when you're dealing with brand new aircraft.
Yeah.
What kind of a timeline are we looking at for Salam Air?
Well, they were originally supposed to receive the E2s by the end of last year, but now it seems like they're going to have to wait until 2026 or even 2027. So it's a significant delay, one that's bound to have an impact on their expansion plans.
It really makes you wonder how these kinds of setbacks affect an airline's overall strategy. I imagine they're scrambling to adjust their plans, especially if they were really counting on those new aircraft to open up new routes or increase capacity.
Absolutely. These delays, they can have a ripple effect throughout their entire operation. It's not just about the aircraft themselves, it's about crew training, route planning, marketing campaigns. Everything has to be adjusted accordingly.
And speaking of adjustments and ambitious plans, let's circle back to Air Borneo for a moment. We talked about their kind of grand vision to expand internationally, but what about their immediate launch plans? Are they on track there?
Well, it seems like they're moving full steam ahead. The Sarawak government announced that they expect Air Borneo to be fully operational by the end of March 2026. So they're busy working on all the necessary steps to make that happen.
Like what? What kind of things do they need to get sorted out before they can officially take to the skies?
Well, it's quite a checklist, actually. They need to finalize regulatory approvals, ensure operational readiness, recruit and train staff, and of course, complete the rebranding from MA Swings to Air Borneo.
It sounds like a massive undertaking. I mean, it's not every day that you launch a whole new airline.
Yeah.
What are some of the key hurdles that they're going to need to clear?
Well, on the regulatory side, they're going to need approvals from the Malaysian Aviation Commission and the Civil Aviation Authority. They'll also need to obtain IATA and ICAO codes, which are essential for things like ticketing and flight scheduling. And of course, they'll need to sign a new Rural Air Services agreement with the Malaysian government.
So there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of bureaucratic hoops to jump through. I imagine there are some operational challenges as well, like setting up maintenance facilities, securing landing slots at airports, and establishing their route network.
Exactly. And let's not forget the financial side of things either. Running an airline is a capital-intensive business. They'll need to secure funding, manage their cash flow, and ensure that they have the financial resources to weather any kind of unexpected turbulence.
Yeah, it's a lot to juggle, that's for sure. But it does sound like the Sarawak government is fully committed to making Air Borneo a success.
They certainly seem to be. They see Air Borneo as a key driver of economic growth and connectivity for the region, but they're also realistic about the challenges involved. They've even set a deadline of December 31st, 2025 to meet all the necessary regulatory, operational, and financial requirements.
That's a pretty ambitious timeline. It'll be fascinating to watch their progress and see if they can pull it off. Now, before we get too carried away with Air Borneo's future, let's bring things back down to earth and revisit Norwegian Air's fleet strategy.
Right, the buy to save approach. What aspects of their fleet composition are we going to focus on now?
Well, we know that they're buying 10 Boeing 737-800s, but what's the bigger picture? What does their overall fleet look like, and who are they leasing from?
Okay, good questions. So let's start with Norwegian Air Shuttle, which is their main operation. They currently have a fleet of 45 aircraft, 39 Boeing 737-800s and 6 Boeing 737-8s. Then there's their sister carrier, Norwegian Air Sweden, which operates another 25 Boeing 737-800s and 19 Boeing 737-8s.
So a pretty sizable fleet overall. And were they leasing all of these aircraft before?
Almost all of them. They actually own 5 Boeing 737-800s outright, but one of those is leased out to Transavia France. Their biggest lessors are AerCap and Vimo Aircraft Leasing.
It's really interesting to see how airlines manage these massive assets and make decisions about ownership versus leasing. There's so many factors to weigh.
It is a delicate balancing act. They have to consider things like cost, flexibility, risk tolerance, and, long-term market trends. And as we saw with Salam Air, sometimes those external factors like engine issues can just throw a wrench into the best laid plans.
Yeah, they really can. Speaking of those external factors, let's swing back to the saga of the grounded Russian cargo plane in Canada. Any new developments in that legal battle?
Yes, actually. The Canadian government has taken a significant step. They've updated their seizure order to better reflect the complexities of the plane's ownership structure.
Okay, remind me again why they had to do that.
Well, remember how Volga was claiming that Canada was stealing their aircraft? Well, it turns out the ownership isn't so straightforward. The updated order acknowledges that there are multiple entities with a stake in the plane, including foreign subsidiaries of Volga Group, Spurbank, and even the group's sanctioned co-founder, Alexei Zakin.
So it's not just a simple case of one company owning one plane.
Not at all. It's much more convoluted, and the Canadian government is trying to cover all of its bases legally before proceeding with that seizure.
But Vogenever isn't giving up without a fight. Right.
Definitely not. They're still pursuing their lawsuits, and that international arbitration claim arguing that Canada's actions amount to expropriation, which is a serious accusation under international law.
This whole situation really underscores how global events can have far-reaching consequences, even in sectors like aviation that might seem, unrelated at first glance.
It's a reminder that we live in an interconnected world, and actions taken in one part of the globe can have ripple effects across industries and borders.
And we see those interconnected forces at play in so many of the stories we've discussed today. From geopolitical tensions to economic pressures, airlines are constantly navigating a very complex landscape.
And that complexity is part of what makes the industry so fascinating to follow.
Absolutely. Now let's shift our attention to another example of those interconnected forces. Salam Air and their efforts to secure additional aircraft for their fleet despite the engine issues that they're facing.
You're referring to their search for Airbus A320s, right?
Exactly. It seems like they're diversifying their options, exploring these alternative aircraft types while they wait for a solution to those engine problems.
It's a smart move, especially considering the uncertainty around when those Pratt & Whitney engine fixes will actually be implemented.
So what's the latest on Salam Air's quest for those A320s? Does that mean any progress?
Well, they've put out a call for 10 A320s, indicating they're pretty serious about adding them to their fleet. This suggests that they're determined to continue their growth trajectory, even with the challenges that they're facing.
It's a testament to their resilience and their ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
And those qualities are essential for any airline that wants to thrive in today's dynamic aviation environment.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From geopolitical tensions to ambitious startups, engine woes to savvy financial maneuvers.
It's been quite a journey through the world of aviation, and I think we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, but I think it's time for us to begin our descent and prepare for landing.
I agree. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've seen today that the aviation industry is constantly evolving. Airlines are facing so many challenges: geopolitical conflicts, economic pressures, technological hurdles, even environmental concerns.
Yeah, it's a really complex web of interconnected forces that shape these decisions that airlines are having to make every day.
And those decisions, they have these ripple effects that extend so far beyond the airlines themselves. It impacts travelers, governments, economies, and even the environment.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that aviation is more than just, getting from point A to point B. It's really a vital part of our globalized world, connecting people, cultures, and economies.
And as the industry continues to evolve, it's so fascinating to see how airlines are adapting and innovating to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and we've seen examples of that today, from Norwegian's buy to save strategy to Salam Air's efforts to diversify their fleet. And then you have Air Borneo, this brand new airline with huge goals to expand connectivity in a rapidly growing region.
Yeah, each of these stories really highlights that dynamic nature of the aviation industry. There's always something new happening, some new challenge to overcome, some new opportunity to seize.
And that's what makes it so fascinating to follow. There's never a dull moment.
Absolutely. So for our listeners out there who are intrigued by the world of aviation, we really encourage you to keep exploring, look beyond the headlines and delve deeper into the stories behind the airlines, the decisions they're making, and those forces that are shaping the industry.
It's a perspective that can really enrich your understanding of the world and even make your travel experiences more meaningful.
I love that. Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to bring this complete aviation solutions deep dive to a close.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure sharing these stories with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the ever-evolving world of aviation. Until next time, happy travels.
And safe landings.